So I've been having issues with this app where, like, after 5 or 6 minutes, it starts to get paused, starts to do some weird shit with the picture. So I'm going to go and make 2 videos for this, and hopefully I'll take care of most of it. But continuing to look at this, that was kind of my biggest notes on the bench press. I also think it's going to help you so much to get off those toes. All right, when we're trying to set up our leg drive for a bench press, so much of the drive comes from our heels. All right, going on your toes may help to get your feet further under you, but at the same time, full heel contact with the ground is so much better than toes, because again, we end up driving through our heels, get meaningful leg drive that goes into the implement. So what you could do is, instead of going forward facing, you can get full foot contact with the ground and externally rotate a little bit, bring your toes out and get them as far under you as possible. That may help you get kind of the same degree of them being under you while still having heel contact, but chasing heel contact is going to be much better from a leg drive perspective. Squat's looking much better. We have decent hinging mechanics. It's gotten a lot better. The one thing I want you to consider is whenever somebody isn't going vulgus with their knees, pretend these are my knees. Whenever somebody's not going vulgus, their knees aren't shooting in, but at the same time, their toes pointed out here, and on the bottom, let's say the kneecap is pointing where my ring is. But the bottom, instead of being tracked directly over their toe, their knee ends up coming in like this every single time and ending up in an unstacked position. That typically indicates little things like that in the lower limbs that aren't stacked properly for optimal power transfer. Usually indicates we need to bring our toes a little further in. So I think for you, it'd be really beneficial to go from here. You're pretty far out with your toes to here. You'll notice that a lot of really good squatters usually have their toes fairly forward-facing, and powerlifting specifically, the Joe Sullivans, the Chris Bridgefords, the Chris Duffins. People are putting up really big numbers and doing so with good longevity and good motor patterns. But at the same time, I just think for you personally and your build, it's always different due to people's anatomical build. There's no perfect way to squat. But at the same time, for your personal build, going from here a little more forward-facing is going to be very beneficial from a power transfer standpoint. Sumo deadlifts looking pretty good in terms of like positions. In terms of long-term development, though, we need to have those knees come out. I'm not sure if I mentioned that last week. Those knees have to come out. Looking something more like this for a setup where we are wedging our knees out as we set up. Okay, going from here to here. We should be getting our hips meaningfully closer to load, knees coming out, hips coming in, chest coming upright. The best sumo deadlifters in the world all have this kind of setup, and it's because this setup is far superior than just starting with their hips really far away and going. Your deadlift right now is safe. I'm not worried from an injury perspective, but in terms of long-term development, putting up really big numbers and continuing to make it safe, you're going to be in a much better position if we can get in a more upright, hips closer to the bar position by starting here and then slowly pressing my feet in the floor, wedging my hips in, bringing my chest up. This is the pattern. Super simple. Don't overcomplicate it. We're just going to go to here. So we're going to build tension, build tension, build tension. I'm yanking up with the barbell, and then once I get in perfect position, I'm up from there. Okay? So let's go ahead and try to get that pattern next week. It's going to be very beneficial in terms of a long-term development standpoint. You'll be able to handle much heavier loads once you get used to it. Now, with this deadlift here, you'll notice that you start in pretty good position. You depress your scapula. You start in this position here. The only problem I have with this position is we got to make sure we elongate those arms. Don't let ever there be any flexion in this elbow. A second flexion happens in this elbow. Bicep tear is at risk. You end up taking away from your power transfer. We always want this elbow to be straight as can be and our arms to be elongated, if anything, instead of trying to squeeze the bar. It's not going to help. But besides that, looks good. Shoulders directly stacked over the bar. But you'll notice that the second you left the ground with the bar, your shoulders went forward. We had a forward motion. Now, when it comes to deadlift, forward motion is death when it comes to maximal loading. It always prevents somebody from hitting the loads they're actually capable of doing. Because the second we have that wasted forward motion, we then have to drive back while we're out of position, and you're likely going to have a lot more emphasis of the load on your lower back, your spine, which is obviously not good instead of our primary movers. So what we need to do, the reason we have that forward motion, though, isn't because of our shoulder being stacked over the bar, isn't because of our build, just because of we're not taking enough tension on the bar. If we take more tension on the bar and actually have the bar bending by the time we wedge and get in a position, we work to get in a position instead of bending down and going, you'll notice that you will not have that issue anymore. All right, so what you need to get used to doing is going from here and then pressing our feet in the floor, working our hips in, pushing our feet in the floor, causing that bar to bend a little bit before we come off the ground, and you won't have that wasted motion anymore. It'll be a really easy fix. You guys just got to get used to the tension building motion that comes with the deadlifts, which is the hardest part, but also the most beneficial part in terms of a longevity, safety, better power transfer, handling better loads. It's really the most important part of deadlifting is getting used to taking tension out of the barbell. I think that's about it for this week. We're coming down to the last week or so of this training block. We're going to run this for about 4 or 5 weeks, likely 5. That's typically how long it takes your body to fully adapt to any given training stimulus. But we're going to go ahead and run this for another week and a half or so. Definitely try to push numbers even more so now. Remember, those last few weeks, the 4th and 5th weeks, is when we're starting to get closer to whatever reps you're doing. If let's say you're doing sets of 5, one of those sets should likely be a as much as you can to an extent. So that's when we start hitting some bigger and bigger numbers. We start getting closer to our maximal load that we can use for those reps and sets. And then going into next block, based on these videos, based on how you performed, we'll go ahead and make a training block that's very specific to how your body has responded to this one, as well as what you need to work on form-wise. Typically with this kind of training, each training block gets more rewarding. Each training block gets a little bit better for the client. Without fail, that's what happens. So really excited to plan out the next training block. I really like the fact that you did a great job at typing in the information. Did a great job writing down load, writing down difficulty rating. Keep that up. That was perfect. The computer, the back systems we use to actually make the next training block will work perfectly now. So I can plan out a really good one in the future. Let me know if you have any questions. Stay safe out there.